Thank you, viewers, for joining us on Worldwide Slot Car Chat number 13. Ooh, spooky number 13. I'm your host, Greg Gaub, otherwise known as Mr. Flippant, on the various internet slot car related forums and other subject matters for that matter. Seattle area slot car racer of primarily 1/32 scale hard body slot cars, both analog with an analog club and digital with a digital club for about the last 10 years. And doing this for fun and to cure boredom during the pandemic times and maybe beyond. We'll see. So looks like we got lots of returning people, and we'll have them do any introduction they would like to do. Don, I'll have you go ahead and do yours next.
Sure. Okay. My name's John Kidd. I'm from Toronto, Canada. Slot racing slot car driving, building since I was quite young. Full-scale racing for about 20 years. I have a little YouTube show called Scale Car Garage. Please view, like, and subscribe. And I guess that's about it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing, John. Love to hear from you every week. Let's go ahead and have Lloyd go ahead with his quick intro. Lloyd?
Hello there, Lloyd from England, Norwich, England. As everybody knows by now, because I don't stop talking about it, I do 1/43rd scale slot cars. I started as a kid back in the 60s at some of the commercial tracks. Never was competitive, but I used to enjoy going around doing these things. Rediscovered slot cars about 10 years ago when I retired, and have been very busy making little slot cars ever since. Me.
All right, thank you very much, Lloyd, and always glad to have you on for the 1/43rd perspective. Al, I'll go ahead and have you go next, and then Luff, if you want to toot your own horn, I'll have you do that after Al.
Okay, Elle Schwartz here, running an experiment at the moment. You're seeing me via my telephone. I'm going to switch back to my computer shortly. I was curious to see if the telephone would work, because I thought one of these days, when I get things cleaned up a bit, on one of these sessions, I'll take you on a brief tour of the workshop. I can't do that with the computer, but I could do it with the telephone if I can figure out how to make this thing switch to its other camera.
Well, look for that little camera flippy roundy icon on the screen somewhere, but I'm sure you'll figure it out sooner or later. Thank you very much for joining us again, Al. And Luff, would you like to tell us about yourself? You're currently muted. If you want me to unmute you, let me see if I can do that. No, you're going to have to unmute yourself there.
Does that work?
There you go.
Okay. How do I get my name on the screen?
Yeah, currently you're showing up as Galaxy Tab A, so there's somewhere that you've got to change your name. I can't do it from, well, actually, I might be able to do it here. Let me see.
I don't know where you enter your name.
Sure I spelled that right. All right, now I changed you to Luff Linkard.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Nothing new here.
All righty, still enjoying life on the island, right?
Yeah, I missed last week because this thing unhooked itself from the internet. But yeah, I love the island. I won't be leaving.
Good. Sounds like a great.
Never get up this way.
If I ever do, I'm definitely giving you a phone call.
Well.
All right. Thank you, everybody else, for joining us. Let me take a look at the list of people here. I see. Oh, Ray, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Ray Karthi. I'm located in North Central Florida. Race the Electrics Digital 132nd, and that's pretty much it. I've been doing it since about 2009. Grew up doing HO, and back to 1/32nd scale now. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us again. One of our regulars with no camera. We'll get that fixed hopefully one day soon. Dennis has joined us. Dennis, you want to give us a quick intro? You're muted. There you go.
I was muted. Dennis Sampson here from Irvine, Southern California. my gas car, not on most of the forums because I used to race RC cars. Been running slot cars on and off since 1963. It's good to be back. See some familiar faces.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us again. And I don't see anybody else on the list. Thank you for joining us again, Chris. I'm sure we'll pick your brain here during the call. All right. So does anybody have any news stories or show and tell or interesting tidbits they'd like to just kind of throw out there for discussion or just to show off a little bit?
I can show you my track if you want to have a look at that.
Yeah, go ahead. We love seeing your track.
I'm gonna just take the thing. I've got to figure out how to change the view.
Or you could just turn the camera around, turn the phone around and point at your track and we'll hope to see something. Or you can do a selfie version. There you go. That looks good.
That's the driver stations. I think that shows most of it, doesn't it?
Yeah, fantastic. Now, what kind of stuff do you put at your driver stations? Do you do voltage control or brake switches or anything like that?
Everything.
Everything.
Each lane is adjustable. It's got its own power supply.
Wow.
We got 3 or 4 different ways of plugging controllers in. I don't know if you know that we race sprockets.
I've heard that.
So we can control like you put in your breakout time on the computer. There's a little toggle switch on each driver station where you can adjust that.
Very cool. Your tracks are inspirational, sir. We love seeing them.
Well, the thing with bracket racing is you can race every car. It doesn't matter how fast it is because it's all handicapped.
You're basically going against your own time, right?
Sorry?
You're kind of racing against your own time.
Well, you put in your own time, and then you have to be consistent. You got to drive as close as you can to that time.
Now, when you race like that, how much racing against the other guys is there? Because I've never raced like that.
Well, the computer puts in a delay. The slowest car starts first, and the fastest car starts last. And then you got, I don't know, 5, whatever you set it at, 5 or 10 laps. You got to catch the guy before they finish.
Ah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'll have to try that one of these days.
Well, it's exciting because you know if you break out, it cuts the power on your lane and you're out of that race.
Oh, just complete breakout and you're dead in the water.
Yep.
Wow.
And you can after every race, you can change your breakout time. You can adjust it.
Or change to a different car if you feel like it.
Pardon me?
Or change to a different car and then change the breakout time.
Whatever, yeah. There's no rules.
That's awesome. Is anybody else race like that?
There's nothing to argue about.
You're only going to argue with yourself, right?
Oh, yeah. Because we had a couple of guys in the club that like building small cars, like little Isetta or, you know, really tiny cars, and they're scratch building little brass chassis for them. And they're like 3 or 4 seconds a lap slower than the fast car. But it's still a photo finish if everybody's close to their breakout.
That's pretty interesting. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, I noticed on the bench behind you left, you've got some, what looks like scenery pieces. Are those to go on your track?
Oh, no. While I'm waiting to get a club going here, I'm playing around with HO trains.
Oh, okay. Wow. It looks really good.
I don't know if you can see it.
Well, if it's half as good as your slot car stuff,
Yeah.
Well, this is something that'll never get finished, but I don't know if you can see it.
Yep.
It's just along one wall. I don't know. Something to do.
Cool.
Question for Love. If you're running those brackets with breakout times, that kind of means that everybody's got to keep good records of each of their cars and how they perform on each lane.
No, we usually do about 3 or 4 laps, and then you set your time,
Oh, okay.
and then after the first race, you can adjust it.
I just remember that Alvin Slubbert, he always has some enormous numbers of records. I think he keeps a spreadsheet of everything
yeah.
that he's got, and he used to. But I guess that's just being an engineer.
Well, I make him crazy because I wait till he's almost finished going through all his cars, and then I change the track.
I was just gonna say you can't keep records with Luft tracks because the track is new by the time you finish records.
Yeah.
Well, I like to change the track about every 2 years.
Or more.
Yeah.
Actually, Luft, how long did it take you to construct the track?
I hate to say,
Go ahead, tell us.
it takes about a week.
What?
The scenery takes a lot longer, but the actual track to get it up and running is less than a week.
Yeah, mic drop is right.
And that's like by yourself too, right? Or you get a helper in there to do it.
Well, we used to race every Friday night, and we'd go in Saturday morning, rip it down, and by the following Friday we'd be racing again.
I know we Canadians are industrious, but that's amazing.
Well, it's not that hard.
It's not that hard, John.
Yeah, you're right. I'm an underachiever, obviously.
Have you ever used a routing kit?
No. I like my fingers. No.
Well, Greg, you're selling that strip, right?
Oh yeah, I got all the stuff. Your fingers
you
are
used
in any danger, John.
Have you ever used a strip?
I have not yet, actually.
Oh, you should, because it changes the way you design a track.
Oh, that was your tool. You put like a strip along, and then that's what the router. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you're also a master of doing the radius, things. You just nail a board in, and then just like put some marks in. If you one of the things that is in the product line that Luft created that I now sell is the video of them building a track, and they basically build a small portion of what would be a larger track, and they basically go through all of the basics of using the strip or using a swing arm to hold the router and do a constant radius thing, and using straight edges and doing banks and everything. And they're just tearing through it like it's just no big deal. Luff is like just kind of doing it, and the guy behind the camera is like, wait, slow down, hold on, you say that over again.
We did that in one day.
Yeah.
We started about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and at 6 o'clock we went out for dinner. Oh, we painted the track first. We went for dinner, came back, and we had it running before 9 o'clock.
Now I know why we put the beaver on our nickel.
Busy beaver.
Well, I've worked with plexiglass my whole life, so it's kind of natural.
Wow.
And I've sold dozens of kits at this point since I took over from Jeremy.
Well, I sold over 600.
I'm sure. Just based on, you go to oldslotracer.com and you'll spend days just looking at all the pictures of people's tracks that they've sent to Luff to put on his website. It's insane. And all kinds.
I used the kit as well when I built mine 10 years back.
Yeah. And I've sold kits to guys in the area, and one of the guys just built a new track for one of the other guys using the kit. And the only reason I haven't used it is because I literally don't have room in my garage for a track.
Well, you got to have a patio behind the garage like I have and put it out there. I mean, you're in Seattle, it rains up there.
That's
I
the
keep
thing. I
forgetting
can't
that.
leave the track outside, that's for sure. Maybe I'll get some marine MDF and do an outdoor track or something like that. I don't know. One of these days, I'll definitely put it to use at some point. I've told myself not to sell my last kit. If I get down to my supplies, only having one kit remaining, I'm not selling anymore until I have enough interest to buy the materials again to start making the kits, because that's not.
It's good to know that you. It's good to know that you sell them, because my routing fence broke.
I got plenty of those.
I loaned it to a friend of mine, and he tried to bend it too tight because he was routing around the outside instead of routing around the inside.
Oh, he didn't get the instruction sheet.
No.
That strip, it also, after about 10 years, it gets brittle.
Yeah.
But I used to tell people not to bend it tighter than it came in the envelope.
Pizza box. That's my favorite part of shipping the full kit, is the only reasonable box that it fits in is a pizza box, a large pizza box. And so you get generic pizza boxes from Costco or whatever. And so when I ship a full kit, it comes in a pizza box, and everybody's like, when they delivered a pizza, I was like, who ordered a pizza? Yeah, it's a lot of fun, shipping those around the world. I did have an unfortunate situation recently. A guy from France ordered the complete kit. And of course, I'm sure you already know that international shipping for a box that size is not cheap. So I usually ship USPS International First Class, which is, to France, it was like $30 just for shipping, which is not too bad considering the size of the box and where it was going.
Yeah.
But this was shipped at the end of April, right as shipping around the world just ground to a halt. And it took more than 2 months before that package was even showing motion in France.
Wow.
And the guy got so impatient, we'll say, and concerned that the package was lost, that he more or less forced me to ship another one via DHL. He paid the additional shipping cost of shipping through DHL, and it got there, and he got it. Then the first package was shown to have been delivered, but he says he never got it.
Yeah, I had a few of those.
Yeah, fortunately, that's the only one so far, and hopefully, I don't lose any more, because somebody out there has probably. The saddest part is, if somebody got that, we'll just assume that he didn't in fact get it and decide to sell it to somebody. The person who got that pizza box opened it up wondering what the hell just got shipped around the world in a pizza box, to find a bunch of plastic mumbo jumbo that they don't understand.
Yeah.
They might watch, or they'd see the video, the CD says how to build a wood slot car track, and they'd say, this is garbage, and then they'd throw it in the garbage. That's the saddest part, is that probably is in the garbage now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ship worldwide, for the cost of shipping. And if somebody wants to pay for DHL, then they can pay for DHL. But so far, that's the only one I've lost out of, a couple of dozen international.
Well, the funny thing about the video is, when we first made it, it was on VHS tape. And
You're actually mailing VHS tapes?
to make a copy, it takes 2 hours to make each copy.
That is definitely an advantage that I have over that. I just pop a CD in my computer and say, burn it, print a label, stick it on, put it in an envelope.
It was taking me about 6 minutes on the DVD.
Yep, that's about right. Yeah.
Anybody who likes analog audio or video technology has never had to actually work in analog or video audio or video technology.
But 8-track tapes are the best.
My favorite are LPs. Yeah, right. Sure. Yeah. Try and get everything, like between dust, fur, and everything. Ugh. That's why we had CDs, and now we don't even have CDs anymore. It's just data.
Yeah, I still prefer CDs, because then the main reason I get CDs even though I listen to them primarily as MP3s on everything I listen to it as on MP3s, is because at some point, MP3s will be superseded by something else. And then I can always rip those CDs to whatever that something else is.
Right. And the other thing about CDs too, having worked for a record company, there's some things that got released on CDs that will never be released digitally. Yeah.
All right.
And they also make great coasters.
Yeah. When you've played them so much that they don't play anymore. Sometimes if I know I'm going to play a CD over and over and over and over and over for years, I'll rip it and burn it on a
On a
CD
burnable disc.
and
Yeah.
listen to that. Yeah, instead of possibly messing up the original. Anyway, CD talk aside, does anybody else have anything they want to talk to Luff about the tracks or anything else they want to bring up? I see, Al, you're holding up a car body. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Am I back on?
Yep, go for it.
Okay, good. Matter of fact, this is related in a way to what Luff was talking about brackets. Interesting comparison here, a couple of bodies that I've got that are on the bench to be worked on. Both of them are from John Warren down in New Zealand. And I've checked both of them, and like all of his work, they're absolutely spot on scale. But I thought the comparison would be amusing because we're talking about different size cars. And here they are, okay? Now, the one which is on my left is a Ferrari. It's an 860 Monza, vintage about 1954-55. The one on my right is from the same era, but it is a Maserati A6 GCS. And as you can see, there's a very significant difference in the size of these two racing cars.
Did they race in real life? Did they race in the same races?
Yes, they did.
Wow.
Yes, they did.
Is there a significant engine difference between the two?
Oh yeah, there's a big engine difference. The Mazda was a 2-liter 6, and the Ferrari, as you can tell from the 860, which was their designation for the single cylinder displacement, was a great thumping 3.5-liter 4. But they did race at the same time, and one of the companions that they raced with, and I'll just drop this for a minute and bring up another one. In terms of size comparison, they all saw one another off at Le Mans. This is a C-Type Jaguar, again, one of John Warren's shells, and the Mazda next to it. As you can see, they are pretty close to being the same size. So, point here being that the Ferrari was a very big car, and as we have all learned, unlike some other things that we're at least told from time to time, in slot car racing, size does matter.
I was waiting for that joke. Excellent. Thank you very much for that education. Do you got something else to show?
Yeah, one other thing, John, this is directed at you, and this is all your fault. Another diversion I've had.
I'm sorry. Well, if it's my wife, I'm not here.
Now it's one that I'm not going to take, so we'll just let it ring for a minute. The one I had to drop off for another call was my ex-wife. Go away. This is a project that you started.
Morgan, nice, very nice.
This is a George Turner body.
Wow. It comes with the driver already molded in.
Well, it comes with the driver already molded in, but in this particular case, the driver is going to come out because I've done some sketching, and believe it or not, oh, go away.
You pick it up and drop it.
Believe it or not, I will actually be able to fit a small sidewinder
Really?
into this body, yes. And it will allow me to cut out the driver and basically build a full cockpit into this model.
Well, now, are you planning to build like a brass chassis, Alan?
Well,
Wow, they are persistent.
put it aside. It'll be metal of some sort. Usually, my preferred chassis material is actually steel,
Okay.
but it will be something along those lines. Haven't decided exactly what it will be until I finish fiddling with the motor.
Wow.
I
That
think,
was my next question. How big or what type of motor do you think you're going to put in there?
well, let me show you something, which I think will give you an idea of what will just about fit. This is one of my Sidewinder chassis.
Right.
I have a little room to move on the gear side. And when I hold these two together and put them up, if you look where the stub axle is, and taking a little bit off the gear side, you will see that it's probably just about going to work.
Wow. Nice.
Looks good.
Very nice.
And that's one advantage of soldering the axle tube right to the motor, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you
Well-
were to turn that around and drive the gears off the can end, you probably have a bit more space even.
Yes and no. The trick that I use in this, and it's not really apparent, is that I actually cut a bit out of the plastic end bell to recess the boss of the gear a bit in there.
Okay. Hmm.
So I gain a couple of millimeters that way.
Yeah, you could do the same on the can side. You could mill it away
Well, that's probably true.
up all the way up to to the end of the magnet.
Yeah. Yeah. And have worth a look. I really never thought about that. I wonder, because I might want to run this in our local class, which specifies this particular motor. I'm wondering whether, what on earth is he doing? I'm wondering whether they would consider that to be a modified motor. I'll have to
Probably.
make an inquiry.
Well, that looks smashing, Alan. That looks really nice. Oh wait, sorry. Can you hear me? Sorry. That looks really nice, Alan.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Do you have a livery in mind yet? I mean, I know we're really jumping the gun here, but
Well, there are two possibilities.
Red or
I'm
green,
looking at.
right?
Back in my days of messing with the one-to-one machines, I had a friend by the name of Gus, actually Gaston Andre. Gus was a Northeast, I think Massachusetts-based dealer in various sorts of automobiles, and he ran a Morgan. Ran it very well. His light blue Morgan would run right with the AC Bristols that many of us were running.
wow.
Gus was he was a very, very good driver. He actually went on to do a fair amount of national and international racing with Alphas and Porsches, as I recall.
All right, now to be totally authentic, are you going to put like one little toothpick in the hood just to say that it has some wood in it?
I've thought about that. He was very good. It was sort of an ugly
put the
car.
toothpick into the chassis, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe I should do one of Al Penrose's popsicle stick chassis for it. Although on the Morgan, the wood was in the body, not on the chassis.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And the other possibility is, sort of the standard British racing green. I thought about doing a two-tone. I've seen a number of two-tone Morgans that are really lovely to look at, like a deep burgundy and cream or something like that.
Yeah. Ooh.
But then I looked at this body, and I looked at where the masking tapes would have to go. And I realistically considered these somewhat stubby fingers, which are not all that agile these days due to severe carpal tunnel syndrome. And I've decided that a two-tone body is not on.
Well, one color will be great.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like it's very thick resin either.
Oh, no. It's quite thin. It is quite flexible.
Oh dear! Wow.
I don't know. Let me.
Is it a slosh cast?
Sorry.
Oh, he was asking if it was a slush cast or a two-part mold. I think they're two-part mold, right?
I'm really not certain. Certainly, the fact that there's a mounting post built in,
Yeah, that's
molded in, suggests that it's a two-part mold.
two-part mold.
Yeah.
I certainly do not see any spigots or vents anywhere.
No, and the parting line is probably the perimeter of the car. That's the easiest way to make a great parting line.
Yeah, that could very well be.
And that post itself, sorry to interrupt, Al, could actually be the injection point and the vent all at once. That's the way I've done that as well.
Yeah. That post will come out because I have a different style mounting that I use.
Wow, very nice.
And I typically, in most cases, we use a 3-point mount.
Okay.
One at the rear and then two somewhere after the front wheels.
And are you planning also to have, I guess, the body float on the chassis?
Probably a little bit, but it'll have to be a very small amount because the wheel to fender clearance is going to be very, very tight. I go back and forth on body float. I am more likely these days to use a rattle pan and confine the motion to that. It does provide a certain amount of resonance absorption, and it also gets the weight down lower.
Nice. Well, hopefully you're going to show your progress either on the forums or at least with us here each week.
Oh, I will.
Very cool. Well, I guess I'm happy, and I'm hope don't have to be sad for giving you yet another project.
Well, it was your narrative that started me back on this.
Well, I hope you like the story about the chap who raced at Daytona. I was blown away by that story.
Yeah. That's anyway. So that's what's happening around here at the moment. And now that I've figured out actually that my phone will work and I can switch back and forth from one camera to the other, one of these days I'll take you on a little tour of the mess.
Speaking of phones, that is the most persistent caller I've ever heard anybody calling anybody for any reason about. Damn.
Well, I know who's calling. It's my ex-father-in-law, and Jim is 92, so
he just lets it ring forever. He really wants to talk about something, that's for sure. All right, does anybody else have anything they want to talk about, or should I dig into my bin of diminishing subjects? Hey, Dennis, yeah, show us what you got.
Okay, I don't know if maybe you guys saw it on Facebook, those that follow me there, but I did this for a customer at Electric Dreams, where I work once a week. This is the NSR generic Formula One car. This was a white kit, and it now has a little bit of yellow paint and a set of decals from a company in Spain called Atalaya, Atalayala, or Atalaya, Atalaya, yeah. And also, if you can see it, I'm trying to get in there, the driver's head or the helmet comes from a guy in Brazil who calls himself Interlagos Miniatures. And
That's Nelson Piquet.
he hand paints these helmets, and the camera doesn't do them any justice because they are absolutely gorgeous. But unfortunately, this car is not staying in my house. It's going to a customer. But I just thought I'd let you know the Atalaya decals are made specifically to fit the NSR car, and there's a whole range of them. They're not cheap, but they're very, very good. The quality of the decal is exceptional. They go on very well. They fit exactly, which is nice because they're designed for this particular car. Anyway, I just thought I'd let you see that.
Beauty.
That's gorgeous. That's beautiful. I'll have to remember that that you do customs for Electric Dreams customers, and I might have to have a custom done at some point.
Yeah, I could do that. I've done a couple actually. I did Electric Dreams holds a lot of the Le Mans miniature and Proto slot kits, and sometimes those kits, if it's just a kit, then somebody will ask for them to be painted and assembled, and I usually do those as well. I did a Proto slot Helmet TX, the turbine experimental car. Did one of those a couple of weeks back, and just finished a Matra MS630, the coupe, the Le Mans coupe, both of which came out pretty well. They're not the easiest things to do, but
Dennis, how long did that take for you to do?
which the
Nelson Piquet Williams.
About 3 hours, I guess. First off, I had to mask it all so that I could spray the yellow, right? And I had to pop the cockpit out and take the roll bar off, and then I could mask that area and mask off everything else because it was a white kit, and then just spray that piece yellow. And then once that was done, then I could get back, I could reassemble. And I reassembled everything, put it all together, and I put the car back on the base when I was applying all the decals so that I didn't touch anything, because I tend to rush these things sometimes, and then I'll be holding somewhere where I've already put a decal, and the next time I look at the car, the decal's missing and it's stuck to my thumb or some part of my hand or some part of the workbench. I don't have the patience that somebody like Chris Walker has.
Well, with that kind of timing, you could build like half the grid by the time Luft gets the track built.
Yeah, pretty much. Although the way he builds it, the speed he builds, maybe not. It took me 14 months to build my 3-lane track. But then I was traveling, so I only worked at weekends, right? So I must say that. So.
Yeah, nobody should use Luff as a measuring stick for track building. Just don't.
And of course, I think if you're using copper tape rather than braid, then that saves you a lot of time as well.
You did braid on your.
You sell the taping tool, don't you?
Oh yeah, everything. You can use.
Yeah,
that
you can lay one lane in about 10 minutes, or about as fast as you can walk.
Yeah, I had one customer using the taping tool to help apply the double stick for putting braid in.
Well, you could use it on plastic track too, if you want to put copper tape over the plastic.
Yep, good stuff. All right, anybody else got a show and tell?
Oh, and then Alan was talking about the George Turner ones, and so here's a George Turner Alpha T33 Periscope, which I just received just a while back. Again, very, very nice, beautiful quality resin molding. John will appreciate it. The same construction underneath that the Moggy had. And then I just received today from Area 71 in Italy, the latest 3D printed Corvette C8R, which is done, and as we were discussing, was it last time or the previous time
It
we were
was
talking about
two
that?
times ago. Yeah, you were expecting that. You were telling
Two
us
times
about
ago,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this thing's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. It's going to take me a bit of rubbing to get the surface finish down, but it has a certain appeal even with this kind of stippled finish. Might just paint it matte black and be done with it. Yeah, it'll look great.
Orange
And
peel.
you were talking about how it prints the roll bar or the roll bar cage as well. Look, oh wow, that's all one piece.
All one piece. All you have to do is pop the driver's head in. Everything else is right there.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's one of the nice things about that printing, that type of 3D printing, is that you can do just pretty much anything, literally anything.
Yep. And then when they mold the bodies, they mold little sections into the body, like here and here, and then back in that area there, where the whole interior just clips in, right? It just fits. Oh. You ever try to do this? It's like working upside down, right? It just slides in there, and it'll clip in at the front.
What's that body weigh, Dennis?
I can hold on, let me get a scale and I'll tell you.
I'm gonna go with 6 grams.
Oh God.
I'm just throwing a number out there. Anybody want to take bets?
12.
All right, so you want just the body, right?
Yep.
Just the body like that weighs. Hang on, I got to turn it on its lid. 13.92 grams. 13.92 grams.
So you got a gram or so for the interior, so you're going to be 17 grams with paint and decals.
17.67 with the interior in. So paint and decals, you're going to be 20 something, right?
Yeah, it's not that light.
It's not that heavy either.
No.
Anyhow, I just thought I'd let you see that.
Can't wait to see it once you've done some work on it.
Me too.
Now, what type of chassis are you planning to use?
Oh, this one, I will probably use the chassis that was supplied with the car, because he supplies a chassis.
Oh wow! So you
with the
you
car that will take a slotted pod. So I'll put a slotted Sidewinder pod in there, and Sidewinder and slotted mechanicals, and I'll run it like that. That's what I've done on my other Area 71 cars. I have a Lamborghini Huracan sitting waiting that I'm going to probably put a brass chassis under for the next GT3 Proxy series. But for now, these ones I'm just putting their own chassis under them because they run so well.
Very nice.
Yeah, the chassis run very, very nicely, very smooth and quiet, and they handle great.
Have you not tried the Scale Auto RT3 pods, Dennis?
No, mostly I use slotted parts because I can get them at Electric Dreams, and I have enough credit there at the moment that I could probably spend for the rest of the year without worrying much.
Okay. That RT3 pod is hands down the best pod on the market right now.
Okay. That's interesting.
That begs the question, Chris.
Sorry?
That
Why?
begs the question, why?
It has by far the most solid rear end on it in terms of the uprights and the motor fixation point. So a huge issue with the slot cars is any movement between the axle uprights and the pinion, which, so if you get twist in the back end, that does a couple of things. It will introduce chatter into the performance of the car, and it'll also introduce intermittent gear mesh. It'll tighten and loosen and tighten and loosen. The RT3s are, try one, Dennis. It's going to cost you a few bucks. You'll never go back.
Chris, are they Sidewinder or inline or both?
Both. They make a Sidewinder, they make an angle winder, and they make it inline. I currently tend to favor the angle winder for the long can motor with an S-can bolted into it. You're muted, buddy.
What are they made of?
Sorry?
What are they made of?
They're all plastic pods.
Probably some kind of nylon or ABS.
Yeah. But if the way the rear uprights are braced, and on the axle upright has a gusset between the axle upright and the motor mount screws. So that makes that end of the pod extremely rigid and extremely nice. Gorgeous.
Yeah, I've seen people basically add that kind of bracing to slotted pods and other pods.
Yeah, no. Well, that's, again, anytime there's deflection in the rear axle uprights. Another thing that I forgot to say is that there's deflection in the axle uprights. They don't always deflect the same amount. So they deflect independently and bind up the rear axle. Unmute yourself, you old bugger.
Do the Sidewinder pods drive off the can end or the end bell end of the motors?
No, they're all can, Dennis, because they've got the motor mount holes for the screws.
Yeah.
Right in the can.
Good. Yeah, I'll try one. Thank you.
Yeah. No, they're great.
And they fit where a slotted pod would fit, right?
Sorry?
They fit where a slotted pod would fit?
Yeah, the geometry of the screw holes or bolt holes or whatever you use is identical.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
And you said what? You said that was Scale Auto, what was it?
Scale Auto RT3.
Yeah, they make a whole bunch of them. Their newest iteration is called RT3, and that's the pod that comes in all their R kits, their racing kits. And
Okay.
it is a great motor pod.
Yeah.
That was going to be my next question, because I've got some Scale Auto 132nd cars, and they are great cars.
Well, all the a quick hint for you is all the RT3 pods are red.
Well, all the RT3 hard pods are red.
They color
I think the only RT3 pods are hard and red, Dennis. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, there's a black one that's not hard and red. I'm looking at Alan Smith's website as we speak.
Okay, you might want to check with Pendle.
I think Greg's gone off to perhaps get one of his, perhaps to show us. I hope.
Well, I'm just on the Scale Racing website right now, 132 slot car website right now, and they have an SC6522 Sidewinder 0.5mm offset RT3 motor pod, and then they have an SC6522C RT3 Sidewinder motor pod offset 0.5mm extra hard red.
Get that one.
Yeah, okay. So there are both. They've got a stock and an extra hard. So they've got a black one and a red one in each size. There's a Sidewinder, an inline, and an angle winder, all with 0.5mm offset, and the red ones are the hard ones. So that's cool. Okay, $11.99. Quite expensive.
Welcome, Phil.
Can I just show you this thing here? See if I can. It's a 1/24 scale. And I built it because this was my first car when I was 16 years old. And it's just all held together with magnets. So the body just pops on like that. And
are you using like magnets from other slot cars, or what type of magnets are you using, Love?
Those little rare earth magnets. I don't know if you can see it there. The little round.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then there's one under the motor.
Oh, you detailed the motor. That's gorgeous.
And the hood fits on with a magnet too. So the whole thing just snaps together like that. And it's not a bad runner. You'd think it was top heavy, but it's not that bad.
It looks like you're always ready to build something, because it looks like there's some sort of gun to your left, just waiting to pounce on something.
It does look like there's something over there on a workbench there.
Yeah, it's like the 007 of slot cars.
That's the fun of not having any rules.
That's wild. Now, did you have any figures in it at all, or?
Oh yeah.
Of course. I was going to see if I had an RT3 scale auto potted slot car in my collection, but apparently I don't. So I'll have to get me another scale auto at some point, or retrofit.
If you want to look at one.
All right, thanks for joining us, Phil. And Steve have joined us since we've been on this discussion. Did either one of you want to give a quick intro? That's fine. Okay, next time. Does anybody have any other show and tell? Okay, Dennis. All right. You want to show us that pod? All right, go ahead and show us that pod, Dennis.
Sorry, I was. There you go. So this is the Scale Auto Audi R8 GT3, and there's the hard R3 pod.
Okay, so I have cars with a pod that looks like that.
Yeah, but it'll be a black pod then probably, or it may be the version 2 pod.
They were red, but they had that triangular shape, so I was thinking it wasn't the same.
May well be.
So to hook that into a slotted style opening, it's got like little arms or something? Oh, at the
front here, there's a T-bar that goes across that's screwed in for those two screws there. Hold this little T-bar, and then it attaches to the chassis with the two screws, front and rear, the same as a slotted pod.
Okay, so I might actually have the car. I just don't know what the insides look like. Well, thank you for showing that to us. And now people have a visual understanding of what we were talking about earlier. Thank you for that. And does anybody else have anything they want to show and tell, or ask about, or talk about?
I just one of the guys in our club, he built kind of a front suspension that was with a rubber band, and when the body leaned, the front wheels always stayed on the track. Like the guide flag would always be perpendicular, no matter how much the body flexed. The guy, he built cars that were just impossibly fast.
Well, we're going to have to get him on here, and so he can show off what he did, because I'm not sure I can get my head around that. Did he post it online anywhere?
No, he built a few cars like that.
That's what we need to see. We need to get innovation like that.
Yeah.
Spread around the world.
You know, if you have a look at some of the stuff that Chris Walker builds, it might not have rubber bands in them, but he builds them with that hinge down the center of the car, and that allows the front wheels to control the attitude of the guide in the slot. So no matter how the back end of the car rolls or moves around, the front wheels hold the guide perpendicular in the slot. It's called a flexiboard, right, Chris?
Correct. Correct, Dennis.
I mean, feel free to add some description to that. Again, I'm trying to envisage this, but I don't build those kinds of chassis. So hard to describe. You know, picture's worth 1,000 words.
As soon as I get my little camera thing here going, I won't tell you what happened. My dog chewed the top of the computer here. So it's much easier to explain in a show and tell. On a lot of the various forums, you can find some of my chassis builds. It's basically a chassis with a central hinge that runs from front to back. So the car torsionally flexes. And then you control the amount of flex with torsion. Yeah, you can control the amount of flex with different size torsion bars and different length torsion bars. And it allows some twist, which you need. Twist is good. It lets the guide remain perpendicular to the slot. It also allows the outside rear tire in a corner to load more progressively, improving grip. So that's the basic function, and the amount of flex varies with track grip, tire grip, motor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So really fast cars on a really fast track, you need a stiffer chassis. Slow, underpowered, skinny, tired cars on a slow track, there you go.
Okay, so this is an old Formula One car of mine. See, right down the center of the frame is a hinge, and that allows, I don't know if you could see that amount of flex going on there, but it allows the whole chassis to twist. So the whole back end of the chassis moves, but the front wheels hold the guide exactly where it's supposed to be. So there's no movement between the guide and the front wheels. So that's how it works.
Excellent. Always love a visual aid. And Chris, once you get that camera working, we'll strap you down and force you to tell us everything.
Okay.
All right, agreed. And it looks like we have RMS Resins joining us today. I've heard of that company. Would you like to tell us all about yourself, Mr. RMS Resins?
If it can work technology. Evening.
Hello.
Hello, David.
I still use that handle only because that's how most guys know me. I see Steve Hendrickson's on. I think that's how I originally met him as well. But did it for a very long time till I became allergic to it and had to stop, and have gone into the 3D side of the house, although I'm no expert like Steve is. He's pretty much led everybody on this, but I've had a lot of experience with casting. I've shared a lot of that with other folks just because it's something fun to do. Produces a lot of interesting things, and took a lot of pride in what I did. So met a lot of friends around the world doing so.
And for our viewing public, can you tell us who you are?
Real name's David Reineke. So if you see me on any of the forums, it's usually D Reineke, somewhere out there. That took a long time to tell people I was not Dr. Reineke, which is what they all thought. So I have the nickname of Doc, and my tagline is usually, I'm not a doctor, but I'll look at that. So
I've got a couple of your resin bodies.
and I've got one of your routing kits, Luff. Actually, two of them. So I appreciate it. You taught me everything I know about routing, and it's been an absolute joy.
Hey, David, it's Chris Walker. How's
Mr. Walker, I thought that was you.
How's your shed going along?
The
I
Taj
haven't seen any update pictures in a while.
It's turning out really pretty amazing, honestly. Far better than I thought it would. My wife, the fetching Mrs. R, has done a tremendous amount of cleaning and painting with me. I'll admit she's done the majority of the work. I'm just kind of the coolie labor. But it's turning out good. I'm probably a paint job and a little bit of touch up to some lighting and some other things to do before I start putting the track back together. And so I'll rebuild the PDR in its last configuration, which was the homage to Riverside. And I'm going to drop at least a 4-foot extension in, but I may go as far as 8. We'll see. It's big enough.
I was gonna say that track ain't small to start with. What's your final size going to be?
Well, if I go with a 4, it'll end up being 24 by 7 at the widest. But if I go the way I want, it'll end up just shy of 30. So we'll see. But It's a fun track. I had a lot of fun building it. After having a very technical Palmer Divide for so long, going to what I thought was going to be almost too easy of a track actually has been an absolute blast to drive. I had some really great club racing, a couple of TA and Can-Am races on it. It's a great track. I love it.
You just moved, didn't you?
I was going to say, hopefully you'll take us for a tour when you get built.
I will. I'm remiss in posting some pictures, so I'll get that updated. But as soon as I get it all put back together and up and running, at least the scenery will obviously take a bit.
Well, I have to tell you, your track, and it was Brad Carando. Was that the other track?
Yes, Mr. Carando, slow but sure.
You two guys, you inspired our daughter to build this wonderful hut that she made me build one summer.
You know, I lost touch of Brad. He was doing a lot of work and then kind of fell off the board a number of years ago. And I'd had great conversations with him over the years because while I think I kind of kickstarted him, I ended up learning from him just because his work was just masterful.
Well, I think he's an architect, or
he is an architect.
Yeah.
Yep, he is an architect.
Yeah, you couldn't tell by his landscape.
I used to give him grief because he'd pose pictures of the track in progress, and all of his X-Acto blades or whatever he was using would be all perfectly lined up, like they were on a drafting table. I just used to give him grief about that. But yeah, Brad is an amazing artist. I have two buildings he made me, or two structures. One is the like a Marshall's hut. And
is that the one with Wide World of Sports on it?
Yep. He did that with the Denver
awesome.
Post and the Wide World of Sports for me. And then he did the scoring tower that I also have. So both of those actually Brad built for me. And I was completely blown away when he sent them. But he said, hey, I wanted to thank you for your work on Slot Forum when you sent the article in, and kind of got me started. And, you know, again, the apprentice became the master very rapidly. He was pretty amazing. Hey, Steve.
Yeah, there must be some pictures of PDR from before on HRW, aren't there? I would assume.
You know, the problem was when I dropped my website, because I hosted my own pictures, it was, you know, like $400 a year, which when I had a business, it was easy to pay. But after that, I was like, you know, it's just the blog. I have posted, I think, a couple of recent pictures, but there's none of the background from it before. Yeah. I'll restart it. I'll restart it.
But
all right.
You still have the photos though, right?
I have all the photos. I've actually downloaded the whole website. It's just I got to find either a cheap and free place to host it. But again, the linkage is what broke. And Slot Forum actually changed forum formats a number of years ago and actually broke all of that, because remember the photo bucket fiasco from many, many years ago. And so I lost the linkage and had been talking to Bob Chapman up in Canada, and he was one of the mods, and he's like, you're going to have to relink all this, re-upload it. And I'm like, dude, that's hundreds of, there's no way I'm doing this. Forget it. Go to the internet Wayback Machine, because that's it. I'm done. So.
Well, there was, if you were using Chrome, there was a widget you could pop into your browser that would take all that back.
Yeah.
But I don't even know if that works anymore, to be honest.
I don't even know either, but I mean, I've got all the pictures, I've got all the history, I've got all the articles and the write-ups and stuff. And so when I start the rebuild of this one, and this one I'm going to have to rebuild the tables on, because now I need it to roll, just in the event I need part of the garage for something else. So I'll build the table a little bit more heavy duty with some casters on it. It'll be rollable. And yeah, I'll chronicle the whole thing all over again.
I'm sure as a fellow Canadian, Bob just said, well, sorry.
No, he was more polite than that. I think he said, eh?
40, eh?
What will the length be, Dave, if you add that 4 feet? Running length?
You know, honestly, I have never measured the lap length on this track. I have no idea, Steve. I'll have to look it up.
I stuck another 4 feet on this one.
What? Where did you stick that? On the end?
Toward where the little shop area is.
You're just never enough, are you?
No, it's 140 feet now for running room.
And you know what? All you've done is created another 40 feet for me to crash on. Thank you so much.
I have a lot of tombstones.
Oh, bring that up.
Well, now
let's just say I've wrecked a lot at Steve's house.
Yeah. Does anybody have any resin questions? I know you're not doing resin anymore, but obviously you are the man.
I don't know about that. You know,
it's a good thing I didn't do any show and tell. I would have been just.
You'd be like, oh no, David's on.
Yeah,
oh, stop it. Nah, I put my pants on the same as you.
Really?
Not
You have
Steve,
two
though.
legs
Steve
and
wears his
one-
backwards.
Oh, okay. Good.
Oh, God. Are we going to start?
No,
And once, come on, guys, just once.
no.
Are we going to start?
You know, resin stuff, though, I mean, I can't take the credit. So there's a very good friend of mine that I actually know via a Chevelle club back in the 80s. I came back from Germany in 84, had rebuilt my Chevelle, got into a club in 85 and met this guy who was only a couple of years older than me named Sean Carpenter. And really great guy. When I sold my Chevelle in 88, finished college and had a family and all that, lost touch with him and the club, and purchased another Chevelle in 2000 and bumped into him in 2002 at another meet. And literally within seconds, started talking about, I'd just gotten into 30-second slot cars. It started off with 2 Scaly sports sets, had the Camaros and the Mustangs, and that's all Scaly had. And I'd bought a AMC Javelin from Noisy Muse and loved the car because nobody had one. And I knew it was based on the monogram or the Revell kit. But the resin really just kind of left me a little flat. It wasn't a horrible car, but it took a lot of work to build it. And so I was talking to Sean about it. He goes, oh, well, I'm a 24th, 25th scale model resin builder and caster. Would you like to learn how to do it? So that's what started it. So I back cast a Revell monogram Firebird right out of the gate, the 68 car, because I wanted Titus's Firebird. And then that one he taught me how to do. We did the 67, 68 Camaro I did next, which I had done scratch building on it because I pulled out the hidden headlights and all that. That was the first car I really heavily modified for myself. And then the 70 Camaro was based on a very bad Japanese car that we then did a ton of work on. And after that, I was off to the races by myself. So Sean really taught me the process well. And it really all came down to the preparation of the master because, I mean, we could talk resin all day, but if you don't prep the master correctly and get it nice and smooth and clean, your castings are going to look like garbage to begin with. Very rough, very 60 grit sandpaperish, as I used to call them. And the bigger problem is going to be is it's going to destroy your molds that much faster because all those little bumps and ridges and stuff cause fissures inside the silicone molds. And so what happens is the resin sneaks into there. You can't spray your resin release in there. And so it just starts chewing the mold up even faster. So I've seen guys waste a ton of money and they're getting 2 to 3 good pulls. And after that, it's all junk. And, you know, within 10, 15 molds or pulls, the mold's just falling apart on them. The longest mold I had run was 85 or 90 pulls, somewhere in there. And that was even the last one I pulled out, the mold was getting sticky, so it was getting difficult to pull the casting out. But the car was not as smooth as my first one, but it was still better than some of the stuff you can find out there even today. So it's just, again, credit goes to Shawnee. He was an amazing teacher doing that.
I'd like to jump in for a minute if I can.
Yes, sir.
Just a couple of things. One, on photos. So far as I know, the gallery function in slot form is gone forever.
Yep.
Doesn't work, and you know I've inquired about it, but it's been gone for 6 or 8 months now, and it looks like it's not coming back. A couple of stories I want to comment on molding. When I started molding slot car bodies, the way you made your mold was to take your pattern, take a paintbrush and paint a layer of liquid latex on it, let that dry, paint another layer of liquid latex on it, put some cheesecloth over that, let that dry, on and on and on, you know, redo 6 or 7 times until you had this funny sort of turd-like looking thing, but it had a decent inside. I still do some molding. I do mine a little bit differently, and I found it works out fairly well. Fair warning here, what I'm about to say will probably horrify some people who worry about air pollution. On the patterns, when I make a pattern after I've finished it, I spray it in gloss black. One, to give me a glossy surface to work on. Secondly, gloss black finish is about as unforgiving as you can get in terms of any imperfections on the surface. When I'm satisfied with that, I use the usual build a mold box out of Lego bricks, you know, porous silicone molds and so on and so forth. when I pull the body, and this probably goes back a ways because the first resins that I experimented with were a little bit on the brittle side. Their resins today are a lot better than they were, but I will slosh in a very thin resin layer because the resins finish well, they pick up the detail well, and so on and so forth. It will be nowhere thick enough to be a functioning or self-supporting body. I let that set, and then I laminate in 2 layers, either using a very fine carbon fiber or a very fine Kevlar scrim, which is put in using West Brothers penetrating epoxy. This is an epoxy that was first developed for cold molding plywood boat hulls. So it is very low viscosity and penetrates very well. It soaks right into these scrims. I find that 2 of those work very well. You still end up with a very thin body. It is extremely strong and very light. I don't have it around handy, but I've got a Ferrari 612 that I built that way. And the body, painted, decaled, and everything else, came in at 11 grams. And one last point to finish up the comparisons, coming back to some apples to apples. We have that same 860 Ferrari in my left hand, and in the closer to same spec, a 4.5-liter Maserati in the right. And they're pretty much the same size, 2 cars of about the same era.
Nice work. Yeah, you know, the technique you just described, as Sean would say, that's kind of how he originally learned to do car bodies. And then somebody taught him how to produce faster, which was stop doing the lay-ins of different types of laminates. And obviously back when he learned, it didn't have Kevlar and those kinds of things. But he kind of taught me the production methodology where once the master was completed and clean and the silicone 2-part mold was done, you cast under pressure so that you get the crush all the air out. And within 45 minutes, you can pop the car out. The key was don't do more than 2 to 3 bodies per day because the mold just stays too warm. And that can also deteriorate the life depending on the kind of silicone you're using. So over the course of, I'm looking at this right now, what is that, 14 years, I cast about 4,300 bodies. And so when you deal with large production numbers, and again, I'm just a little guy in a garage, right? But over the course, I mean, you get some big orders where there's a shop in Germany that would routinely order 40 to 50 bodies in one shot. You're popping out cars pretty dang quick. So you need something that's consistent, produces the same car every single time, doesn't deteriorate quickly. And so I've actually got pictures of this guy's order in particular, where I had like 25 Datsun 510s all lined up side by side by side. And from the first to the last, they and all the parts looked the same. And that was the one thing that I took away from the production from Sean was, if you do it correctly, you can replicate and duplicate it the same way every time with an extremely high success rate. And, it just really helped, particularly the way I did things. I didn't carry an inventory. I did it to order because I learned very quickly that if you put stuff in inventory, somebody inevitably who wanted that car wouldn't buy the car. And so now I've got 20 of these sitting here. And, now you're either discounting them or sitting on them forever and a day. And so I just said, you know what, I'm going to do it. If it's a new body, I'll do maybe 10 out of the gate, just so I have 10 orders ready to roll. And then after that, it was, I would tell you, it's going to take you about 2 weeks to get the car because I'll make it and get the kit out to you. But yeah, it's interesting to talk to other casters. I've learned a tremendous amount from them. I was just talking to a gentleman yesterday about spin casting figures because I had done some figure casting more as a test for somebody who I won't name who does very large racetracks, and decided it was a pain in the absolute backside and didn't like it. So all the figures on my track that I started casting, they're mostly repops and monograms, Eldon, stuff like that I'd modified, or some of them were just straight repops. But it became such a problem. I said, I'll do this for myself. And when these molds are dead, they're done. And that's kind of how I did it.
David, did you do multiple molds for popular bodies, or were you just doing like one mold per body?
Oh no, I actually, I keep looking over because I have my spreadsheet up. I can tell you on the popular bodies, there were bodies I remolded probably 4 to 5 times, because some of those molds you'd pull into the 200-300 cars per type. And, you know, the popular ones like the 70 Camaro, the Datsun 510, whatever, those cars, you would end up having to remold them multiple times. It was just the way it went.
Oh, so
The 510 right now, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So you would remold them as your production progressed. You didn't have multiple molds to do production.
One caveat, the Datsun 510. The 510 I knew was going to be a huge seller, and so I created 2 molds out of the gate. And basically, I had teased that car for a pretty long time because it took me a while. That car was 3D printed. I was playing with 3D back in 04, 05. I actually had a next engine 3D scanner for a period of time. So there's an interesting story with the 3D stuff. So a number of bodies I could hand do only so much. I'm not, you know, somebody who can carve a block of balsa and turn it into a Maserati. That's not me. I can take a model and change it enough that I can put the right grill in the car, or I can change a body line or whatever, but I'm not that guy. So modifying is one thing, but doing from scratch was a totally different. So I got into 3D because one night I was watching Mythbusters, and they were showing that crazy scenario where the guy hooks a jet engine up to an Impala and launches it out in the Nevada desert or something, right? So they're showing the episode, and what got me into it was they show them using this next engine 3D scanner, which I'd never heard of before, and they scanned a 24 scale model, upsized it, and vacuum formed it, and that was their test vehicle with an Estes rocket on it. And I literally was like, what wizardry is this? I have to find one. So I literally hit the internet as the episode's playing and ordered it for $2,500 and got it in. But before I ordered it, actually, so let me caveat that, I didn't quite order it right that minute. I contacted them that day and I said, okay, so I just saw this on Mythbusters. I need to do a proof of concept before I buy this. And they said, what would you like to do? I said, I want to scale a 24 scale model down to 32nd. Oh yeah, we can do that. Where can I print this? And they said, plenty of services we can hook you up with. I said, okay. So I sent them a 67 Cougar. The 67 Cougar, if you look up the Mythbusters episode with that VTOL or whatever rocket they put on the car, the next engine was given the rights by them to interject the model of my Cougar being spun around inside it, because when they showed the episode, they didn't show much of the computer program. You could tell it was SolidWorks, but now I know that. I didn't know at the time. I was like, oh, look, it's a CAD program. But you didn't know what it was. And so when they show it now on YouTube, actually in the middle of that, you'll see the 67 Cougar, and it's mine. And the proof in the pudding will be, and I can show you the original model, is there's a goober over the driver's side headlight where the bucket for the headlights, it's all closed in, is because I dripped glue into that when I glued the thing on before I set it out. And they called me and they're like, hey, the model looks pretty good, but we got this one spot the computer just can't fix. I'm like, I'll hand do it. So they did that. I sent it off to a service, the STL file they sent me, and that cost me $350 to get printed. Steve, you could have bought like 5 printers by then. And then once I got it, it was typical rough 3D printing, which is why there are historical threads I've been on Home Racing World in particular saying this is not quite ready for prime time. Steve has completely disproven that, by the way, and so is my own printing. But back in the day in 05, that was not the case. It was pretty rough. And for $350, everything Steve has printed or I've printed today blows it out of the water. And I actually have all my 3D models except the Datsun, which shattered in the mold. And thank God I always backcast it, because the backcasting would be, ABS is too hard to carve on. It's a very rough medium and very, very stiff, very hard, difficult to sand, honestly. So I backcast the Cougar, then poured a resin out of it. So it's a 2-part mold, did all the normal silicone, back the silicone, got a beautiful mold of it, did all the work on that. And what I noticed that was weird that I hadn't expected is, while on 24 scale, it's got perfect proportions. When you bring it down to 32nd, the sills actually shrank slightly. So the bottom of the body was too high. So I actually ended up adding some styrene to it, did a couple other minor modifications to it, did the glass and all that thing, and then turned around and backcast the new master, and that's what started it. I actually did an interesting comparison with the one that Ski Electric put out, and I was pretty proud of the fact that my lousy 3D print in 2005 was pretty freaking accurate. But the Datsun was the first one that I actually scanned with the next engine. So I scanned it, sent it off to the same rapid prototypers, another $300 and something later. And that car also needed some hand finishing just because of the roughness. Plus I wanted the bumpers off of it and some different stuff like that. So over time I got pretty good. I ended up hooking up with an outfit out of, oh, there's my Datsun.
Actually, Dave, we
Yeah.
just 3D printed this one.
Oh, that's the 3D. Nice.
Nice.
Is that Vlad's model? That's a beauty.
I don't remember.
I think that came from Vlad because I'm pretty sure I got it too.
Yeah, it's just nice to see it after years.
Oh,
What-
well, so there's a funny story. My Datsun is still kind of living on. John Munter down in New Zealand actually requested if he would be able to do it for a customer of his. And I said, absolutely. So he has repopped the 510. So if you see that, that's actually my model with permission, which every once in a while I get a weird email. Hey, there's a guy out of New Zealand repopping your cars. You aware of that? Yeah, I know. Because that was always a problem in the resin business.
Yeah, I
I
never
just
had,
finished building one of his, and it came out very nice. He did a very good job of it.
He did a beautiful job. You know, John is a good caster. I know he does a million different projects, and he's got them across every genre of racing or car that I can imagine. You know, when I got out of the business, I was really looking for somebody to pick it up. But with him in Australia or New Zealand, excuse me, it cost effective. And you know, there's certain cars that over time tapered off in sales. It's the way it is. But yeah, John does a really fine job. The last part of the 3D though, I had finally started getting 3D models over the last probably 8 years or so, and could get them in STL format well enough that I found an outfit in the UK. It's the same guys that Chase Cars was using. That's how I actually hooked up with him. If you've ever seen the Chase Cars, he's got the American cars that tilt and all that and slide around the corners. He does some crazy stuff. And so I started using them for SLS printing. And honestly, the technology by this point had gotten so good the last couple of years. The Corvair, the Dodge Dart I did, and the Chevy 2 took such little finishing work. I only backcast them, honestly, just to do a minor sand on them, but it was more to pull the bumpers and the grills and that kind of stuff off so that I could reassemble it as a kit, because certain cars I wanted the bumpers off and I wanted to do a single cast. You know, that's not what I was looking for. So it's amazing to see how the technology's changed. And as Steve has shown a million times probably on these, the technology for the home printers has just gone through the roof. And I've printed stuff that I never thought I'd be able to print off of a $175 printer. So that's pretty impressive. So.
Yep.
Wow.
So yeah, any other resin questions?
We've got a bunch of resin people on here.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of the funny thing that the cottage industry has always rallied around the slot car stuff, because typically you just couldn't get it. And I mean, I watched guys, you know, as I was growing up as a kid, who were building stuff out of, you know, spare parts of different things. And it just amazed me that today we've got all these great parts available, but you still find, you know, not as many bodies as you'd like. And, you know, Steve's pointed out probably several times, you know, he's got Steve, 22, 24 Can-Am cars nobody else makes. And so you're not getting that if you're not doing something like this now.
Yeah, and again, that's you. I have to thank you, because you really helped inspire my daughter to get her bug eye going.
I'm glad to hear that very much.
Yeah, and that did really well. She's still trying to keep up. She still gets orders, so thanks.
That's awesome. Well, it's funny because when you guys came onto the scene and you said your daughters, I'm like, what are they doing? It was just cool to watch. So I know I haven't been heavily engaged in the forums in the last couple of years, but I still do kind of keep one eye on them occasionally. So I do poke in to see what you guys are doing.
Oh.
They're in mostly Facebook, I think now, right?
No, we don't do Facebook at all, actually. She's 21 now.
Stop. Wasn't she like 12 when she started this?
Yeah, she started when she was 13. Yeah.
13. Okay. Yeah, I remember she was pretty young. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, thank God she takes after her mother. Whew.
Yeah, don't we all say that?
Oh, and I mean it. I mean it. You missed this, but I'll just for 2 seconds. She's the one who got to meet Paul Newman. I didn't.
Wow.
That's another story. Yeah, but the other cool thing too is that all the articles that she had an article written about her in Moss Motors, Truth About Cars, stuff like that. And even like when Chris saw her at our local slot car show, I mean, the support's just been overwhelming. It's been great. And
That's
again,
awesome.
thank you.
I love seeing people do that kind of stuff. You know, the one thing that I've always said with RMS is, you know, you look at the people on this Zoom right now, and I just lost my grid, so I just can't even see anybody's face. There we go. But, you know, you look at the people that you meet in the hobby. I mean, so you mentioned your daughter met Paul Newman. So Steve Hendrix, and I worked in Minnesota because I lived in Colorado, but my company was in the headquarters is in Minnesota. And I think I posted out there years ago on probably Home Racing World, hey, is anybody up there? I know there's a club. You guys race, what night? And so Steve's like, oh yeah, we race every Thursday at my house. And I'm like, oh, okay, so where are you? And he goes, oh, I'm out, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I have no idea where that's at. But he goes, oh, I'll pick you up. So he comes all the way into downtown Minneapolis, picks me up, drives me out to his house. We have this incredible track to race on. And so that kind of became my actual club because I wasn't racing with anybody in Colorado, just basically because of time. And I suddenly found I was up in Minnesota a lot of times. And so, you know, you take something like that. And this past March, Steve and his wife were in Florida. We went to Sebring. It was my first time to Sebring to see the Trans Am cars. So it was awesome getting to share that with a friend of mine that, you know, I met through slots. And I've had people from around the world literally race at my house. My wife just shakes her head, and she's a good woman because she just puts up all this crap. So
it's true. We had a group over from Denmark. Two years ago, a group came from Denmark to run on the track. I mean, think about that. You know, that's pretty neat.
That's crazy. It is absolutely crazy.
And you're just like jumping out of your own shoes, and your wife and kids are like, who's this stranger coming in here?
I actually had a guy from Denmark, believe it or not. So that's funny, Steven. I've got to look his name up because I've got pictures. But he had reached out to me and said, hey, I'm going to be in Colorado Springs. You ain't even near that. And at the time we lived in Colorado. I'm like, yeah. And I go, why? And he goes, well, I'm going to be there visiting somebody. I'm like, huh, what's the deal? And he goes, well, there's a girl at the Air Force Academy who's graduating, and she came over here as an exchange student because the Academy allowed that for 1 year. And so she lived with us, and we're going to come visit her and see her graduation and see her family. I thought maybe he'd bought some bodies over the years, and he's like, love to come race on the track. So he came up with her and her dad, and the girl's comment. Now, picture this. She's like, what, 22-ish maybe, getting ready to graduate within the week. She walks in, goes into the basement, sees the track and the cars. She goes, oh, my God, there's more people like you. But I had to almost throw the guy out of my house at like midnight. It's like, dude, I got to work tomorrow. This is a Tuesday night. Come on. I had no idea it was going to go on that long. Really, really nice guy. But, man, it was just like, all right, this is getting really, really late. So that was pretty funny.
That's definitely one of the fun things to do when you're traveling for whatever reason and you've got some spare time, is to just kind of hit up the forums and say, hey, I'm going to be in this area. Is there anybody there? Or if you already know somebody is in that area, you hit them up and say, hey. I mean, I took a trip to Florida a few years ago, and I was like, hey, is there anybody down there, you know, in this area? And, you know, when my wife was off doing, you know, board meetings and stuff like that, I went over and raced on his track. It was like, cool, you know.
Who was it? Do you remember the guy's name?
I don't. It was down in the southern Florida area.
Oh, okay.
He had his track was 4-lane Electric Sport. It was a weird footprint. It was like mostly square, and it was up in his. It was on his second floor in the kind of area that is not bedroom and not hallway. It was like a big kind of
loft.
Just a loft. Yeah, I wanted to call it a loft, but it's, I don't know, it didn't really seem like a loft. But yeah, it was like, you know, take your shoes off, walk upstairs, and boom, there's this big ass slot car track right where you'd figure a couch and a TV would be. But, you know, in Florida, you keep your cars in the garage. You don't put anything else in the garage because you can't use your car if you leave it outside. So.
Oh, actually, now that I've just moved here, I'm going to throw a wrench in that. Actually, in Florida, nobody uses their garage. They use it for storage because they don't have basements. So they throw all this crap in the garage, and the garage isn't heated or cooled typically. So everything just melts. That's my theory.
I mean, that's what I'm in the Pacific Northwest, so my garage, my cars sit outside all the time. They don't get overheated or over cold. It's So my garage is my track and
And
store.
they're clean all the time too, because it rains all day, right?
No, the rain washes it off. It's fine.
Yeah, down here in Southern California, nobody uses a garage either.
Yep.
Well, that's what the guy told me, is he had his track upstairs because cars get so hot in Florida that you can't get in them. So he keeps his cars in his garage. I guess he was the fluke of Florida, I guess.
Well, I do keep my cars in the garage. I can't stand not having them in there. So our cars are all in the garage. The garage I'm building, this house has a 30 by 40 detached garage that the guy we bought the house from was an ex-roundy round racer for years and years. He was 75 when we bought the house. So he said he hadn't done that in a long time, but he'd spent the last 16 years throwing boats and tools and machinery and more crap into this 30 by 40. And so they actually had a hard time getting out of the house in any kind of normal time for moving because he had so much stuff to pack up that he'd just been chucking in there. Well, the doors were up all the time. So it had every imaginable bug known to man in there. It was an incubation spot. I think Steve was on a text I sent to him and Paul, one of the guys up in Minnesota. It was the first night we were in the house. I'm trying to fix something. And I know when I'd seen the garage earlier that day in the daylight, and I didn't know where all the light switches and stuff were, I'd seen an old roll of duct tape and I actually couldn't find my duct tape. And I'm like, I know there's some out there. Let me get this fixed. So I go out to the garage, I open the door, and as I'm fumbling looking for the light switch, I see a spider, I swear to God, this big. It's as big as my face.
Sure.
Bolting across the garage door 2 feet at eye level from me. And I think I told Steve and Paul, if you heard screaming like a little girl, that was me. And if I'd have been packing that day, I'd have shot the thing. That's how much it pissed me off and scared me. So that's what we've been cleaning and fixing and insulating and air conditioning and putting a ceiling in and all of that. But down here, there's no basements. Those are called in-ground pools. So I have to put the track and my stuff somewhere.
Well, it sounds like a fun place to race slot cars.
It may be eventually.
Well, I'll tell you what, here's a spider killer for you.
That'll do it.
That'll do it. That'll do it.
The garage comment is sort of amusing. A few years back, well, probably almost 20 years now, when I was at one of the last of the slot car conventions out in the Los Angeles area, I spent an evening with Philippe Gillespie. He and I have been friends for some time, and we were at his house down, I forget,
Newport Beach.
Newport Beach, Dennis, you would remember, which is shall we say, a very, very nice area.
Yeah.
And it's on a very, very nice street. And he commented, and he rolled up the door to his garage, and there was this flat-out race AMG prepared Mercedes and one other car in there. That on his street, it was sort of crazy. People use their garages, and they typically had, maybe $5,000 worth of crap in their garage, and they had $200,000 worth of cars sitting on the street.
Yeah, I don't have expensive cars, so I don't care if they're sitting out. But I can imagine that. Yeah.
This conversation has been instructive and an interesting parallel, because a topic which arises routinely on all of the various slot car fora is slot car racing dying? Words to that effect. And you get all sorts of opinions back and forth. Obviously, from a U.S. standpoint, if your venue is the commercial slot car track, the big 124th Blue Kings and so on and so forth, it's nothing compared to what it was. But as I look back over now, nearly 70 years of messing about with this stuff, the range of cars, parts, supplies, options, and so on and so forth available today is better than it has ever been.
True.
And I think there's a lot of cross-pollination. Oops, hang on, sorry, a lot of cross-pollination between the scales as well. Like Lloyd, I've used small motors from 1/43rd scale cars, and that's basically what we use for the bug-eyed sprites, right? Same size. So, and then, you know, I imagine you can use, well, like a Fox or a Cheetah for a 1/24th scale car as well, or a 1/32nd scale car. So there's a lot of interchangeability.
Yeah, in our small scale, we're sport for motors. There are so many motors available now. I know if you're doing serious club racing in bigger scales, you need certain motors, but we need whatever fits in our chassis, and they're tiny little chassis. So, but China sends us so many cheap little motors for a few pence. I've got boxes full of them that I'm never going to use. I'm just trying out different motors. We are sport for choice, and as you were saying, and on this forum, there is slot car dying. I don't think it is. It looks very strong right now.
You know, it's a good point you brought up, though. There's been an argument that I've had with a few folks on different forums that have worked for, shall we say, multiple slot car companies. And they'll always argue that, well, there's only X amount of people even doing this anymore. And that number is ridiculously low. I know more people doing slot cars than that number they keep giving me. And I would say my sales numbers at RMS blow that out of the water. So I think that, sure, there's a lot of underground, as I'll call it, slot activity. And while we're not maybe buying one specific brand, there are more than one brand out there to buy. And so I think those numbers as a whole, I mean, not everybody has to like the same Volkswagen Bug, right? Or you don't need 12 WRX CR, Subarus from 18 different companies. So sure, they may have one company's not perform well in sales, but I don't think it points to the entire market sucking. I think that, sure, people are more selective. I think the hobby's gotten much more expensive over the years. And sure, the kids of today aren't into cars the way I would wager probably every one of us was. And so that does point to, I think, the market shrinking, but I don't think it's dried up. And again, everywhere I go, I find people doing this. There's a group 30 minutes from me here in Tampa that is begging me to come race. These guys pull 16 to 20 guys every single Saturday. And unfortunately, it's a club format, and it's not the club format that Steve and his guys run, which is a little bit more gentlemanly. I'm not taking a shot at them because I haven't even raced with them. I have to go qualify for this whatever race coming up here. They want me to do that this week. But, they run a pretty specific format. And again, I'm kind of a scenery dork. I'm kind of a realism dork. So we'll see if I stick with it. It doesn't mean it's a bad group of people, but doesn't mean I have to hang out with a club either. My interests are just elsewhere. And I think, Lloyd, looking at you and some of this stuff, I think you did a hill climb proxy at one point. Did you not?
Yeah, there's another one.
I loved that.
There's another, we've got another proxy coming in, sometime in September when the cars get here.
But see, you are the antithesis to the 43rd scale guys' comments that 43rd is just the toys. Because I've seen some of the work you guys have done, and I look at that going, if I could honestly redo it, I probably would have started casting in 43rd because of just the sheer amount of ridiculous bodies available. And now that the wheels and the tires and the motors and all that stuff are available, it's even, as you mentioned, better than it was before. And I think Alan actually pointed that out, that there's parts now that were never available back in the heyday of the slots. So I think I look at what you guys have done in 43rd, and I think that if you broad brush the entire slot car market, sure, you could make some pretty dire comments. But I think if you look at the different pockets, I think you're missing the whole thing, which is it's much bigger than I think people honestly think it still is. My opinion.
No, I agree. I've never touched a one-to-one racer or talked to him that hasn't had a slot car set.
Yep.
Not one. In fact, I had a couple of, I won't call them events. I had some of these guys over to my, and much like you, David, they didn't leave till 4 a.m. Right. I mean, one of the guys, he's the F1 guy here for our Canadian TSN coverage. His name is, well, it doesn't matter, but he's kind of poo-pooed it at the beginning, and then I couldn't get the controller out of his hand.
No, it's funny.
Yeah.
Lloyd, those are fabulous, by the way. Is that a
Yeah.
Herb bug?
These are some of the entries in the proxy that's coming up. All scratch built 143rd.
Lloyd, is that a Saab?
That's a Saab, yeah.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
This one come from Aki, who's in Finland. It's great, a really nice little model, that is.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
We got a Mini here from Peter in Austria.
Wow.
Which I thought the scaly one was small. I'm not sure I could even pick that one up.
I am very happy with my little Fiat 500s of the original type.
Have you got one there?
I haven't got one handy at the moment. Here's a Renault. There we go, up there somewhere. Yeah.
Yep.
Again from Finland. There's still a few to come yet, but these are all resin bodies.
That's awesome.
Are they your bodies, Lloyd, or someone else's?
The Renault and the Saab were my body. The Mini is a plastic body, I think. I've got an awful lot of bodies and not an awful lot of cars built up.
By the way, you may not want to say that in public just the way you just did just now.
Body shells, resin body shells.
There you go. People look at you weird.
Yeah. Yeah, these are just a few of the cars that have been turning up for the proxy. This COVID thing has delayed it. It was going to happen in June, but we've just put a date of post it by August, and we'll run it when it gets here.
Well, there's the irony. I mean, people had time to build, but it took time for you to get the cars.
But having them this early, it gives me plenty of chance to do testing. Round and round and round.
Well, guys, I hate to do this, but I actually have to bail off. I've got a prior commitment I need to join on with, but I was super happy I finally got to join one of these.
Well, thank you for coming. Great putting a face
absolutely.
to the work and the name.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. And I will share one thing. Only the host can do that. Okay, never mind.
No, I can make you I can make you shareable.
All right, I'll show you the eventual slot car garage. Hang tight.
Ooh.
Hold on. Where is it?
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah. Okay, I think I need to do
As long as you don't call it scale car garage, I'm good with it.
Be careful in there.
Oh, I might not be able to, but let me.
That's okay. I'll do it next time. Anyway, well, listen, you guys have a great night. Nice meeting you all, and love to hear more from you guys next time.
Dave, quick question before you leave.
Yeah.
Was that group Scott Culp's group that you were talking about?
It is Scott's group.
Okay.
They've been after me since he knew I was moving to Florida, and I went down and watched them. Good group of guys, but I'm just going, Steve can tell you I suck driving. Seriously, I suck driving, so I don't want to make anybody more embarrassed than that.
I enabled screen share for you, so you should be able to share your screen if you want.
All right, let me see here. Share content, photos. All right, so this is a little, it's about a 2-week-old picture here.
No. Oh, okay.
Wow.
Nice.
So it has been painted, or it's partially painted now, and like I said, that's actually the track in the far back you can see standing up against the wall. So it actually traveled pretty well. Obviously, the scenery is going to need a lot of work, but the overall table structure and the roadbed survived. And the funny part, I was worried about tape in Florida. It has not budged, and it was in that garage when that garage was 120 degrees. So I'm not braiding. I'm going to stick with the copper tape, honestly. So there you go. That's what I'm building out right now.
Gorgeous.
We
Nice
do have a
space.
guest bedroom, and I do have a pool, so come on down.
You also have a car that's made in Canada.
Yes, I do, and I love it every minute. All right, guys. Everybody have a great night, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for coming, Dave.
Take
I
care.
gotta
Bye.
head out too, you guys. So have a good evening.
Okay,
Well,
Shane.
we are drawing our 2 hours to a close. We've only got a few minutes left. Are you leaving too, Lloyd?
No, I'm leaving you.
Waving? Okay.
See you next time.
All right. See you, Lloyd.
Hey, Lloyd.
Cheers.
Well, like I said, our 2 hours is coming to a close. Does anybody else have anything they want to talk about or share or show or ask or not? Let me look at my topic ideas for anything short here.
Alan, you mentioned on the forums to turn down a motor for the TSRF pod. Can you do it without a lathe? How do you do that?
Okay, this is where I ran into a problem with the forum. I tried to describe to you what I think might work. So let me try to do it in words. You take 3 pieces of telescoping tubing, and I don't have any examples of it here, but these are available from McMaster Carr. They have a steel tubing in 4mm OD, which is 2mm ID, 6 OD, 4 ID, and 8 OD, 6 ID. Okay, you get 3 pieces of that tubing. Put the 4mm and 6mm together, fasten them together, probably with Loctite, or sweat solder them, either way. Take the 8mm OD tubing and slit it probably 4 or 6 ways at the top, down about 2.5 millimeters. Still with me on this? Okay. Take those slits and sort of pizza pie cut them at an angle to give you a row of teeth around there. You can touch up those teeth with a file and make them sort of sharpish, but then they don't have to be razor sharp. Slide that over the 4 6mm combination with the 4 6mm combination recessed about that same 2.5 millimeters. Okay, then you take your motor like so, slide your now sort of homemade hole saw over the shaft. The 2mm ID will center on the shaft and twist. And your little saw teeth will cut around the soft plastic. And as it happens, even though there's sort of a semicircular or arc-shaped slits in the plastic, you will be inside those. So you cut that down about 2.5 millimeters, pull it out, and then take a sharp saw, a razor saw or X-Acto knife, and simply slit off or slice off that excess rim around it. And what you now have is a plastic boss, 6 millimeters in diameter, which is the appropriate diameter to fit the end of a TSRF chassis, and you snap it in.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. I'm going to give that a try. Thank you.
As I say, I have not tried it. No guarantees. But you asked me if there was a way to do it without a lathe, and that's what I thought of.
Yeah, no, I'm going to give it a shot. Thank you.
Interesting. Have to keep an eye on that. Definitely share with us whatever.
Well, it has always been my principle that lazy people like me are underrated. It's the lazy people who make the progress in this world. It's the hard workers and the ambitious people, nose to the grindstone types, who are continue to do things the old hard way. I always look for the easy way.
Well, I would change easy to efficient, right? And the other aspect too is that youth is very much misspent on the young.
Why are you looking to replace the motor in that, John?
Well, just to get, I guess, a little bit of a tamer motor in it, Chris.
Yeah, well, are you using the motor that came with it?
No, I have some empty pods, and I also got, the only thing that fits is like a cheetah or a fox, and they seem a bit too hot for just around the track.
Yeah, but you can get low power 13D motors, easily, like 15K motors.
Oh, okay.
They're doing all that stuff.
Oh,
Yeah, but it's not a 13D. It's an FK130.
right.
Yeah, but I mean, in Europe, they're all called. That's what they call them.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that like the Mabuchi kind of Scalextric type motor?
I
Yeah.
like,
No,
Somebody sold a 10K one of that. I
That's-
forget.
I put one of these S cans in a TSRF some years back without all of that. But basically, all that I did was I just cut away the back end of the chassis right here, cut it away, and then on the other side where the drive is, I just screwed it in, and didn't have to modify the motor at all. Most of these motors will run quite happily in either direction. So that's the other option if you really need to do it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and you'll still get the good mesh for the Sidewinder as well.
Of course, yeah, you still get the good mesh, and then I just cut the opposing side right down until I knew that the motor was sitting horizontal and nice and flat in the chassis. There's no support on that end, but the other end has 2 screws through it, so it's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
I looked at doing that, Dennis, and I guess my concern was doing that amount of cutting on that nylon chassis would leave it a bit too flexible.
Yeah, the flex in that chassis is forward of the motor box, and that's where the main problem with that chassis is that it flexes ahead of that. The rear end is actually pretty stiff, but the ahead of the motor box, as it goes forward underneath the steel pan, is terribly flexible, and that's what makes them chatter.
Surprised you put that much work into that chassis.
Oh, this was done way back when I lived in Colorado, and I was actually living in a hotel in downtown Denver before my wife and I moved there full time. I was working there, but I hadn't moved there yet, and I was racing with the one of the clubs. I don't remember. I think it was the Vintage Club, and we had to run a. I can't remember what it was, but I had the chassis because I'd gotten it as a prize, I think, at one of those slot car conventions Alan was talking about. And what I also had was a Professor Motor / True Scale vacuum formed Chaparral 2J. And so that's what I did with it.
Nice. Very nice.
So it has the TSRF chassis underneath it and the vacuum form body on. Actually, it doesn't run too bad.
Speaking of True Scale, I got an email from Victor a while ago.
Oh, yeah.
Selling off a bunch of stuff. Do you have any updates on Victor?
Victor Ferguson is busy at the moment selling off the estate or the collection of a man named Roger Moon, who was a member originally of the MESAC club that was in Inglewood, California. And Victor is a friend of the family, and so he is the guy who is disposing of Roger's slot car collection, and he's doing it in 2 ways. He has a bunch of stuff that he's put on an on-site store that is called RPM Model Cars or something like that.
That's it.
And then he also is selling some stuff on eBay under his own eBay seller name, which is TSPVMF. And all of the proceeds of what comes from those sales is going to Roger's family.
Yeah, I got the email on the RPM. He sent me the link to the RPM one.
Yeah.
Any chance he may be doing any more bodies at all?
Oh man. Sometimes I think yes, he's going to do them. Sometimes I think he's not. He owes me bodies that he promised me probably 7 or 8 months ago that I haven't gotten yet.
Okay.
And I live 10 minutes from his house. So Now, he changed jobs again a little while back. He's working down in Newport Beach now, so he has a lot more time. But unfortunately, both he and his wife, or certainly his wife, contracted COVID-19, and he had to nurse her back to health. And he himself has tested positive for the antibody. But I think they're both okay now. But with Victor, there's always something happening, always something that is the reason why he just can't get to whatever it is that he wants to get just right now.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and have that be the last word for this recording. And for everybody who's watching later on, come back to a live one and join us. And for everybody who's still here, feel free to keep chatting after I hit the stop button. And wave bye-bye if you want to. Bye, everybody. Bye.